This morning, after weeks of back and forth, Senate Republicans have finally unveiled their proposed changes to President Trump's self-titled Big Beautiful Bill, including cuts to Medicaid and eliminating some clean energy tax credits. The announcement comes as a new KFF survey finds that Americans generally not so in favor of the bill, with nearly 2/3 of the American public expressing their disapproval. CNN's chief data analyst, Harry Enten, is with me now. So where is support for this mega bill?
You know, I'm really surprised when I look at polling data. I look at it every day. But the amount of disapproval for this bill, holy cow, my goodness gracious. And, you know, you mentioned the KFF poll. We're talking about 29 points underwater on the net favorable rating. But that matches the Quinnipiac University poll from last week when it was 26 points underwater. Oh, my God, you need Greg Louganis to get that far underwater. And, I mean, we're talking about a negative 41 net favorability rating among independents in the center of the electorate. You rarely ever see pieces of legislation or proposed pieces of legislation as unpopular as this. But here you see it in two polls, 26 points underwater and 29 points underwater. No good.
All right, what about the GOP? Because we have seen some pushback from some lawmakers, and we saw that, I don't know, nuclear reaction from Elon Musk about this bill. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, there is a large chunk of the Republican Party that is not in favor of this bill. So this is the GOP with an unfavorable view of this bill. And what we see here is, look at this, 23% are opposed, have an unfavorable rating of the Big Beautiful Bill. Now, to put that in some perspective, Donald Trump's unfavorable rating with the GOP is 9%. So this is more than double. All of a sudden, you're taking a huge chunk of that MAGA base, of that Republican base that is turned against this bill. It is not just Elon Musk. It is not just Ron Johnson, the Senate Republican from Wisconsin. It is a large chunk of the Republican base, is large, double the percentage that have an unfavorable view of Donald Trump, have an unfavorable view of the Big Beautiful Bill. And I will note that in the KFF poll, the unfavorable view, get this, 36%. You rarely ever see anything that Donald Trump backs get that high of an unfavorable view among Republicans. But here it is with the Big Beautiful Bill.
Yeah, and there's a very small margin there, so they're going to have to work out these details. Give us some comparison. 2017, we saw a bill that had Trump tax cuts in it. What does the support look like compared to that?
Yeah, you know, that wasn't that popular back in the day. It was a minus 17 net favorable rating. But here, what do we see with the Big Beautiful Bill on the aggregate? Minus 28 points. So this is far more unpopular than those tax cuts were back in 2017. And remember, Republicans lost the House in 2018. So if this is the Big Beautiful Bill, it may be a Big Beautiful Bill for Democrats if it passes, because they'll have a big, beautiful night come midterm night of 2026.
In my sad math, that is almost double.
Yes.
There. Almost.
It's not good. It's not good.
All right, Harry Enten, it's always good to see your butt out here.
Yours.
All right, John.
And a Greg Louganis mention to boot. All right, with us now, the former governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu. Governor, thank you so much for being with us. All right, you just saw Harry's numbers there. You know, 28% underwater. So if you're giving advice to your Republican colleagues, do you change the bill or do you force it?
You remessage it. So it's really, most folks in America don't even really understand exactly what's in the bill. And a lot of that is because they haven't messaged what's in it, why they're doing it, what the tax cuts mean. The fact they're not just, you know, slashing Medicaid like a lot of the messaging on the other side is. What they're really doing is saying, look, we're just going to say there's a work requirement, which was always designed to make sure that able-bodied working adults could get Medicaid. Well, let's just make sure that you're actually working. So I think it's more of a messaging problem. Now, the interesting aspect of those numbers is, the reason Musk doesn't like the bill is it doesn't go far enough for him. Right. The reason most Americans don't like the bill is because they think it goes too far. So there's actually a diverging reason why it's not very popular.
I will note, I'm going to move on to other things. In the Kaiser poll, when actually people were given more information about the Medicaid stuff, they liked it less. It may not be a messaging thing on that side of it, but we'll see what they choose to do.
CNN's Arlette Saenz is live on Capitol Hill with the very latest. Give us what you got. There has been a lot of back and forth on this.
There really has been, Sarah, and top Senate Republicans are meeting some resistance from within their own party to Trump's economic agenda that they're trying to push through on the Hill, which could potentially complicate that July 4th goal that they have set to send this bill to President Trump's desk. Now, in the hours after the Senate Finance Committee released this proposal, we heard from Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who said that he is currently a no because this does not do enough to cut spending, and he pours was some cold water about that July 4th deadline. Now, to run through a bit of what this proposal includes, it is keeping the state and local tax deduction cap at $10,000. That's going to be an issue with some Republicans in the House who had wanted this to be at $40,000. There are also deeper cuts to Medicaid. And as you mentioned, Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri is one of those who has taken issue with the changes to the provider tax. He has specifically warned about the impacts that this could have on rural hospitals in his and other states. Now, even as there are some lawmakers expressing some concerns about this proposal, the Senate Majority Leader John Thune has said that there is still a lot more work to do, but he's optimistic about that July 4th deadline. Take a listen.
This is a piece of legislation that we need to get across the finish line. It's harder in the Senate. We have different rules that we have to comply with than they do in the House, and we're in the process of working through it. But in the next couple of weeks, I expect to get it done. There's a lot of work between now and the July 4th break, but that's absolutely right. We're going to get this done, and it'll be out of the Senate, and hopefully we'll get it on the President's desk before the 4th of July.
Now, Thune can only lose support from 3 Senate Republicans, so there's a lot of questions about how this will move forward in the Senate, but they are hoping to potentially start holding votes late next week to try to send this over to the House, which then would still need to be approved if there are any changes.
Arlette Saenz, thank you so much for your reporting there on Capitol Hill for us.
Senate Republicans have revealed their version of President Trump's spending and tax bill. The Finance Committee's framework makes significant changes to that measure that narrowly passed the House. And one point of contention, deeper cuts to Medicaid through the so-called provider tax, which is how states raise money to pay for their portion of the program. Senator Josh Hawley says it would effectively defund hospitals. Democrats are echoing that concern.
I've actually been traveling into red states to talk to the people there about what they're going to lose. Missouri is going to lose 400,000 people will be kicked off Medicaid's rolls. I talked to the National Hospital Association. 30% of our safety net hospitals, most of which are in red states, will shut down if these Medicaid cuts go through.
Pat is back. Chuck, I want to go to you. Late night couch mentioning Missouri. In terms of messaging, it's pretty clear what's happening here, saying, look, red states, look, Republican voters, this is hitting you. Should we expect to see more of this?
I think so. And what you're going to see is messaging centered around rural hospitals. They take the brunt of this. And it's one of those issues that Democrats and Republicans can come together on. In rural America, healthcare is hard to find. I grew up on a farm in East Texas. We had to drive 18 miles to go to the nearest hospital. There's a lot of other folks that are like that. And Democrats see it as a place where they could bring in some of these rural Republicans and say, like, hey, this is too much.
Is that remotely possible, Charlie Dent?
Well, look, the politics of Medicaid have changed a lot since 2017. Republicans recognize that many of their base voters are on Medicaid and benefit from it, probably more so than the Democrats, and particularly in these rural areas Chuck just mentioned. So I think that the Senate's going to have a tough time enacting these Medicaid changes. There are other problems with this bill, too, that we haven't even gotten into yet. They've just kept the SALT deduction at $10,000. That's going to upset House members.
But I assume that's because some people have already kind of said, okay, fine, they're going to waffle on that. It feels like this Medicaid thing has become a bit of a sticking point.
It is.
And a rallying issue for Hawley, of all people.
Well, for Hawley, I suspect Senators Murkowski and Collins and others are going to have some difficulty with this. You may remember in 2017, we tried, I said Republicans tried, I voted against it, but Republicans tried to block grant Medicaid with a cut, and that couldn't get through. And now we're talking about limiting the provider tax from 6 to 3.5%, which is the way the states draw down
I want to
money.
leave you guys with one last image, which is this poll where nearly 2/3 of the American public disapproves of the one big beautiful bill.